Pay close attention to what happens inside your brain the exact moment you tell your best friend about your massive new goal. You lean in, your pitch rises slightly with excitement. You lay out the business plan, the fitness transformation, or the career leap you are about to make. And as they smile, nod, and tell you, "That sounds amazing," a quiet, lethal wave of satisfaction floods your central nervous system. You feel accomplished. You feel validated. You feel like you have already taken a massive step toward your new reality. Except you haven't done a single piece of actual work. What you just experienced is a devastating psychological trap, a neurochemical illusion that sabotages over 90% of human ambition before it ever hits the ground. By announcing your intentions, you forced your brain to release the exact same dopamine hits reserved for actual victory. You stole your own momentum, killed your drive, and opened your strategic plans to the subconscious envy and subtle fiction of the people around you. Most people live in a continuous cycle of talking, seeking approval, and resetting their goals every 6 months because they cannot stop leaking their ambitions to their social circle. They spend their lives bleeding cognitive energy into conversation, while their actual reality remains entirely stagnant. If you walk away right now, you will keep falling into this exact neurochemical trap. You will continue seeking cheap social validation, bleeding your focus, and wondering why you can never seem to cross the finish line on your biggest ambitions. Stay with me. I am going to break down the cold, precision behavioral mechanics behind strategic silence, showing you how to seal your verbal leaks, leverage internal psychological tension, and execute your goals with quiet, terrifying efficiency. When you formulate a high-level goal, your brain builds an internal store of psychological tension. This discomfort, the gap between where you currently sit and where you want to be, is the primary engine that drives human discipline, focus, and physical execution. The moment you open your mouth and broadcast that plan to your friends, you release that tension prematurely. Your brain does not clearly distinguish between the social reward of talking about an achievement and the actual physical execution of the work. When your friends give you immediate positive feedback, your central nervous system experiences a surge of dopamine. You feel the satisfaction of winning without enduring the pain, sacrifice, or labor required to achieve the outcome. Because you have already received the neurochemical reward, your internal drive plummets. The urgent necessity to execute vanishes, leaving you with a half-baked goal and zero momentum. When you share your unexecuted plans, you are not just leaking dopamine, you are exposing your frame to the unconscious dynamics of your social environment. Even your closest friends carry subtle, automated ego defense mechanisms. When you announce an ambition that threatens their sense of relative status, their subconscious mind registers a silent threat. Unconsciously, they begin projecting subtle micro-behaviors designed to pull you back down into the group's baseline. They will offer well-meaning doubts, masked as rational advice. They will ask probing, skeptical questions, or subtly change the topic to minimize your momentum. By exposing your raw, unexecuted vision to outside scrutiny, you invite external doubt into your baseline. You force yourself to spend vital cognitive energy defending your frame rather than directing that energy toward ruthless execution. High authority operators understand the immense power of internal pressure. When you keep your plans strictly enclosed within your own mind, you create a pressurized reservoir of psychological force. This internal tension acts as a continuous, uncomfortable signal from your central nervous system, reminding you that your reality does not match your vision. Because you refuse to drain this tension through cheap social chatter, your brain has only one available outlet to relieve the pressure: direct, unrelenting physical action. You transform discomfort into fuel. Every hour spent working in total silence amplifies your focus, sharpens your decision-making, and accelerates your operational speed. The impulse to broadcast your plans is a non-verbal admission of a weak, insecure frame. It tells the world that you require social permission and external encouragement to trust your own trajectory. Low authority individuals constantly seek applause before they have performed. They use their social circle as a crutch, relying on the enthusiasm of others to sustain their fragile motivation. When that external enthusiasm wanes, their effort collapses. True behavioral sovereignty means operating from an absolute self-contained baseline. You do not need your friends to understand your vision, validate your intelligence, or cheer for your progress. You set your terms, lock your jaw, and execute regardless of whether the room is watching or completely silent. Shift your operational strategy from public broadcasting to complete tactical stealth. Treat your ambitions like classified operational data that stays locked inside your internal command center. When people ask what you are working on, adopt a neutral, nondescript posture. Offer minimal details, redirect the conversation back to them, and keep your true focus entirely hidden. Let your daily behaviors carry a quiet, unhurried intensity. Maintain total physical composure, keep your vocal pitch grounded, and focus every ounce of your daily energy on moving the needle forward without announcing a single step. There is no necessity to explain your vision when your outcomes leave no room for debate. When you master the discipline of absolute silence, your results eventually force their way into physical reality. You do not have to convince your friends that you are building something remarkable. They will observe it in your posture, your status, your environment, and your undeniable accomplishments. Shifting from talking to executing transforms your social presence entirely. You move from being the person who endlessly promises big moves to the individual whose quiet, steady presence signals absolute, unyielding authority. The neurochemical illusion of premature victory is the primary biological reason why broadcasting your ambitions actively sabotages your ability to achieve them. When you set a high-level goal, your brain naturally creates a state of internal psychological tension. This discomfort, the felt gap between your current reality and your desired outcome, serves as the fundamental biological engine that drives human discipline, focus, and physical execution. It generates a subtle, persistent restlessness designed by your nervous system to force you into action, driving you to expend physical and mental energy until the objective is secured. However, the human brain possesses a critical vulnerability in how it processes social reality versus physical reality, making it easily tricked by the simple act of verbal communication. When you open your mouth and share an unexecuted plan with a friend or colleague, you trigger a premature release of dopamine within your brain's reward pathways. As your listener smiles, nods, congratulates you, or expresses admiration for your vision, your central nervous system receives immediate positive social feedback. To your subconscious mind, this social validation is interpreted as an actual, completed victory. The brain releases the exact same neurochemical reward hit that was supposed to be reserved for crossing the finish line after months of intense labor and sacrifice. You experience a sudden sense of relief, pride, and accomplishment simply by speaking the words, artificially satisfying the internal tension that was meant to propel your physical effort. This premature neurochemical reward creates a devastating operational consequence. It completely drains your internal drive. Because your brain has already received its neurochemical payoff without enduring any real-world friction, the urgent necessity to do the hard work instantly evaporates. The psychological pressure that previously compelled you to wake up early, stay focused, or endure uncomfortable discipline vanishes, leaving you feeling strangely passive and unmotivated. You are left with a half-baked ambition and zero kinetic momentum, having traded the massive, permanent satisfaction of real-world achievement for a temporary, low-value rush of cheap social praise. In advanced behavioral mechanics, this process is recognized as a self-inflicted cognitive trap that keeps high-potential individuals stuck in perpetual stagnation. People who constantly talk about their goals fall into an addictive feedback loop where they endlessly generate new plans, broadcast them to their social circle for a quick dose of validation, lose the drive to execute, and then abandon the project once the initial dopamine high wears off. They become professional visionaries who mistake the act of talking for the act of doing, draining their cognitive capital on empty conversations while their actual circumstances remain entirely unchanged. To preserve your operational momentum, you must protect your internal dopamine economy with absolute discipline. You must recognize that every word spoken about a future goal acts as a leak in your internal pressure vessel, bleeding off the vital energy required to overcome real-world resistance. By training yourself to keep your ambitions completely enclosed within your own mind, you deny your brain the illusion of premature triumph. You lock the dopamine trigger behind real, tangible execution, forcing your nervous system to remain hungry, focused, and uncomfortable until the work is actually finished and the objective is fully realized. Exposing your unexecuted plans to your social circle creates an immediate vulnerability in your psychological frame, opening your strategic trajectory to the subtle, subconscious friction of your social environment. When you reveal a future ambition, you assume that those closest to you will offer unconditioned enthusiasm and objective support. This assumption ignores the fundamental mechanics of human social dynamics and ego protection. Human beings constantly measure their relative status, security, and progress against the individuals within their immediate peer group. When you announce an ambitious move, whether launching a business, mastering a high-value skill, or executing a radical lifestyle shift, your vision automatically disrupts the unspoken baseline of the group, triggering automated self-defense mechanisms in the minds of those around you. Even your most trusted friends possess subconscious ego defense systems that operate below their conscious awareness. When you share a plan that signals high authority, rapid growth, or financial independence, your peers do not merely hear your goals, they subconsciously evaluate what your success says about their own stagnation. Your ambitious trajectory implicitly highlights their own unfulfilled potential, unexecuted ideas, or comfortable complacency. To protect their internal self-image and maintain the existing equilibrium of the relationship, their subconscious mind initiates subtle, nonverbal microbehaviors designed to pull your frame back down to match the collective average. The intentional preservation of internal psychological pressure is the core engine that drives consistent, high-level physical execution in total isolation. When you construct a high-value vision for your future, your mind naturally generates a potent state of cognitive dissonance. This dissonance is the uncomfortable sensation that occurs when your internal ambition directly conflicts with your current physical reality. In human behavioral mechanics, this psychological tension is not a negative emotion to be soothed or pacified. It is a pressurized, highly volatile fuel source specifically designed by your central nervous system to compel immediate action and bridge the gap between where you stand and where you intend to be. When you choose to keep your plans completely sealed inside your mind, you effectively close all pressure relief valves. You refuse to dissipate this internal charge through casual conversation, social media announcements, or seeking reassuring head nods from your peers. Because there is no verbal exit for this psychological tension, The pressure within your nervous system intensifies, forcing your brain into a state of heightened focus, urgency, and operational clarity. The discomfort of unexecuted potential becomes an inescapable internal signal that continuously demands a solution. Your mind recognizes that the only way to relieve this persistent pressure is to manipulate real-world variables through relentless, concentrated physical output. This enclosed psychological pressure acts as a powerful amplifier for daily discipline, eliminating the reliance on fleeting emotional states like motivation. Motivation is notoriously unreliable, fluctuating based on energy levels, social interactions, and mood. Internal tension, however, remains constant as long as the gap between your reality and your vision exists. When you operate under this pressurized framework, procrastination becomes far more uncomfortable than the actual labor required to achieve the goal. You no longer need to summon artificial enthusiasm to wake up early, endure monotonous practice, or execute complex tasks. The sheer weight of your contained ambition drives you forward with mechanical certainty, converting your internal restlessness into raw, uninterrupted, kinetic energy. Furthermore, building internal pressure sharpens your tactical decision-making and heightens your ability to enter deep work states. An open mind that regularly leaks its intentions into social chatter is easily distracted, constantly seeking new forms of novelty and validation. Conversely, a pressurized mind becomes singular in its focus, filtering out irrelevant environmental noise and prioritizing only those high-leverage actions that directly move the needle. You develop a lower tolerance for wasted time, low-value interactions, and superficial distractions, recognizing them as leaks that drain your operational energy. Every hour spent working in silent concentration becomes an intentional release of that stored tension, providing a deep, grounded sense of progress that no amount of social praise could ever replicate. Broadcasting future moves is an unspoken, nonverbal signal that exposes a weak, fragile frame reliant on external social validation. When an individual feels the compelling urge to announce an upcoming project, business venture, or personal overhaul to their peers, they are unwittingly demonstrating that their internal certainty is insufficient to sustain their actions. In high-level behavioral dynamics, self-contained authority does not require external permission, peer review, or social applause to validate its direction. True authority moves with calm, quiet momentum because its conviction is fully generated from within. The desperate impulse to share unexecuted plans acts as an energetic plea for the social group to nod, validate, and grant permission, signaling to everyone in the room that you do not fully trust your own capacity to execute without a cheerleading squad behind you. This constant need to signal intent stems from an underlying insecurity about your own baseline trajectory. Low-authority individuals rely heavily on external feedback loops to regulate their self-worth and motivation. When they tell their friends about a big plan, they are attempting to borrow status from a future reality that they have not yet earned. They use the excitement and admiration of their social circle as an emotional crutch, using external enthusiasm to temporarily mask their internal self-doubt. However, because this external validation is inherently unstable and fleeting, the moment the social chatter ends and the individual is left alone in silence, their fragile motivation vanishes. They have built their entire operational foundation on the opinions of others, leaving their trajectory completely at the mercy of environmental approval. In sharp contrast, high-authority behavioral frameworks are characterized by complete internal containment and nonverbal composure. An individual operating from a sovereign frame recognizes that broadcasting intentions lowers their perceived status and dilutes their air of mystery. When you reveal your moves before they manifest, you make yourself predictable, readable, and easy to evaluate. You surrender your tactical leverage by letting your environment know exactly what you are doing, why you are doing it, and when you plan to do it. High-value operators understand that true power lies in maintaining a tight, impenetrable frame where your internal strategies remain entirely hidden behind an unbothered, calm exterior, leaving observers unable to measure or predict your next shift. Eliminating the subconscious need for status signaling forces a rapid upgrade in your psychological maturity. You shift from an external locus of control, where your actions are driven by how you appear to others, to an internal locus of control, where your actions are dictated strictly by your own rules and standards. You no longer care whether your friends understand your vision, approve of your timeline, or appreciate your ambition. You stop using your social circle as a sounding board for unearned pride, choosing instead to let your physical presence remain quiet, grounded, and focused. You develop the rare, formidable capacity to sit in a room full of people while holding a massive, life-altering strategy inside your mind, feeling zero impulse to leak a single detail for cheap approval. By mastering internal containment, you project an undeniable, subtle authority that non-verbally signals absolute self-reliance. People around you intuitively sense that you are driven by an internal mechanism that does not require their input, praise, or validation to function. This subtle shift in your baseline changes how your social environment responds to you. Rather than viewing you as someone who endlessly talks about big ideas, they perceive you as a quiet, grounded force whose actions are deliberate and whose frame is entirely unshakable. Stealth operational mastery is the definitive behavioral state wherein your strategic progress, personal evolutions, and high-level achievements are executed in complete, impenetrable silence. In a culture dominated by oversharing, constant status updates, and frantic demands for attention, choosing to operate covertly becomes a massive competitive advantage. When you adopt a stealth framework, you stop treating your life as a performance for an audience and begin treating it as an internal command center. You build, refine, and execute your strategy strictly behind closed doors, allowing zero leaks to escape into your daily social interactions. You move through your routine with an unhurried, calm composure, deliberately keeping your vocal cadence, posture, and facial expressions neutral, regardless of how massive your internal progress may be. Operating in stealth fundamentally alters your social positioning, instantly raising your perceived value and nonverbal authority. Human beings are naturally intrigued by mystery and unsettled by individuals they cannot easily read, categorize, or predict. When you consistently keep your plans, financial goals, and personal moves locked away, you deny your environment the data required to evaluate or box you in. You become a black box to those around you, quietly present, deeply focused, yet completely unreadable. People intuitively register that something significant is shifting beneath your surface. But because you offer no verbal confirmation or boastful hints, your silent frame commands a unique, unforced respect that no amount of self-promotion could ever buy. This deliberate silence allows your real-world outcomes to accumulate until they reach a critical mass that can no longer be ignored or hidden. There is an immense, undeniable power in letting physical reality deliver your statements for you. When you eventually reveal a completed project, a physical transformation, or a sudden, massive leap in status, without ever having spoken a word about the process, the impact on your environment is immediate and devastating to any opposition. You do not have to argue your worth, persuade skeptics, or explain your methods. Your undeniable high-value results shatter all doubt, presenting a finished reality that leaves no room for debate, friction, or interference. Furthermore, stealth execution protects your work from external disruption during its most fragile, early stages. When a strategy is new, it requires absolute focus, rapid adaptation, and total protection from outside opinions, criticisms, or premature praise. By keeping your operational plans entirely dark, you ensure that every iteration, pivot, and improvement happens in a clean, sterile environment, free from social contamination. You build your foundational structures without having to manage external expectations or endure the distracting noise of onlookers. You retain total tactical flexibility, capable of changing course instantly without having to explain or justify your adjustments to anyone. Mastering stealth operations permanently elevates your self-mastery, anchoring your identity in raw substance rather than performative display. You develop a profound, quiet confidence that stems purely from the cold, empirical knowledge of what you are capable of achieving when nobody is watching. You no longer require the applause of the crowd to know you are winning, nor do you need external validation to feel powerful. You master the rare art of quiet execution, allowing your actions to remain completely invisible while your undeniable, self-evident success carves out a high-authority reality that speaks entirely for itself. C.